Joan Cartan Hansen. Thank you for joining us for this Dialogue Web Extra. We're continuing our conversation with Robert Whitman, the author of Priceless, a memoir about his work with the FBI crime team. Let me ask you about the Bill of Rights. This was one that came from North Carolina. Right. It was one of the original handwritten copies that was sent out at the time.
Right.
The Bill of Rights was established by George Washington.
Right.
You said it was stolen in the siege of in Civil War by a Union soldier.
Yeah, that's
then
true.
What happened to it?
Well, it's an interesting case. It was actually on display at the State House in Raleigh, North Carolina during the Civil War, during the years up to the Civil War. And then in 1865, one of the troopers with Sherman's troops coming back from Atlanta, coming back up to north, when they took Raleigh, they went in and they basically kind of ransacked the State House. One of the troopers took it with him. He rolled it up, took it with him.
Took it
as a souvenir, a souvenir of war. And when he went back to Indiana, which is where he was from, and basically sold it for $5. Okay, and it stayed in Indiana for the next 130 years, where a family owned it. They kept it. There were a couple of occasions when they asked the state of North Carolina if they wanted North Carolina if they wanted it back. And the state said, well, we're not going to buy our stolen property back. We want it back, but we're not going to pay for it. It's something you should be giving it back to us, if you're gentlemen. That's how they put it back in the 20s in letters. So as a result, the family had it. And then an Antique Roadshow appraiser, another one from the Roadshow, one of their famous appraisers, got wind of it, and he went and bought it. And the idea was to try to buy it, to sell it again, and make a profit. So he bought it from these two sisters. I think he paid about $100,000. And he then offered it for sale to the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. There was a new museum devoted to the Constitution. And it's right in Independence Mall in Philadelphia. They call that the most historic mall in the country. That's where the Independence Hall is. It's where the National Constitution Center is.
The Liberty Bell.
The Liberty Bell is all right there. So the National Constitution Center was very interested. They said, yeah, we would be interested in that for $4 million. Okay, let's talk about it.
That's a nice profit.
Yeah, it's a good profit. Well, what happened was the governor of Pennsylvania then started looking into it. They were putting the money together, and they found out that this particular one, and they learned because it had franking. It had some signatures on the back, and the writing on the back matched the letters that were attached with it when I went to North Carolina. So they were able to identify the handwriting to say, yeah, that's the one. Well, they found out that this was the one that was missing from North Carolina. So the governor of Pennsylvania talked to the governor of North Carolina. They said, there's no way that we're going to let that particular piece go into a museum anywhere but North Carolina. So the U.S. Marshals got a warrant for it. The problem was they didn't know where it was. So they contacted me. I was in Philadelphia, and they said, what do you think we can do? I said, let's do an undercover operation. Well, what we'll do is we'll go and we'll pose as the buyers. We'll go through with the actual sale with the National Constitution Center and their attorneys. And we ended up doing a rather elaborate, fake buy in a high-rise in downtown Philadelphia in a white shoe law office, where we had this deal going. It was very interesting because I was in the room, and what happened was the person who had the Bill of Rights, he didn't actually bring it in with him. He comes in, he looks at the check for the $4 million, which was real, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of zeros on that check. And then he looked at all the paperwork and the documents that had been prepared, just as if we were going to do the deal.
Yeah.
And then he made a phone call, and a courier on a bike came over to the building, and he came in. I knew this because we had surveillance, watching, and he came in and brought the piece in. It was almost like a drug deal. Very strange. He brings the piece up, and he brings the Bill of Rights in. And I'll never forget, they took it out of a tube and we unwound it. And it was a piece of vellum about 4 feet high. An amazing piece, all handwritten in ink. And you could see how it had been faded over the years from just being out in the sunlight and whatnot. And the words rang out, the Bill of Rights. And it was just an amazing thing to see. At that point, we got as much evidence as we could. And I called in the SWAT team again from the conference hall next door, and they came in, and we were able to arrest everyone and recover the piece. So.
But then, when you returned it to North Carolina, you played a practical joke on everybody. Tell us about that.
Well, my partner and I, my partner was named Jay Heine, and Jay and I were talking about it, taking it back. We actually used the director's jet. It was so important a piece. I mean, you were talking about one of the 13 original copies of the Bill of Rights. It's not a copy; it's the actual piece. And so it was so important that we couldn't figure a way to drive it to North Carolina from Philadelphia. So we took the jet, one of the jets, and we took it down, and we had built a case for it. you know, and it was a special case that kept it, you know,
Flat,
foam and
yeah.
flat and all that for it. And Jay and I went across the street to the National Visitor Center in Philadelphia, and we bought a little copy of the Bill of Rights, you know, one of the printed ones, and we put it in the top of the case. So when we got to Raleigh, we went into the U.S. Marshal's office. The FBI was there, the U.S. Attorney, people from the governor's office, and they all wanted to see it, of course.
Of course.
So Jay and I brought it in. We took the top off of the case, and then we did this little pratfall where we dropped out the little copy, and we dropped it on the floor, and Jay stepped on it by mistake. And everybody was there, and you should have seen their faces. They were just shocked, you know.
Well, of course, it was April Fool's Day.
It was April Fool's Day.
April Fool's Day that you did this.
Exactly. So they were shocked and mortified. And then, of course, we told them, don't worry, it's real. And we were laughing. They weren't laughing so hard
Yeah.
in the beginning. But I think
well, it was a good thought while they went.
it worked out well.
Art crime is, we've talked before or in the broadcast show about it's not a victimless crime. It's everybody's, everybody suffers when a piece of art is stolen. And yet the resources in our government are not, there's not really anybody, that, after you retired from the FBI, there was no one to take your place as a full-time. There are obviously good members of the FBI, good investigators there, but why is there a lack of emphasis on detecting and solving art crime?
Well, I mean, I can only speak for the FBI. You know, for what I know from the FBI's program, they have certain priorities, and art crime it comes under the property crime priority. So really, you know, when you look at a piece of art, it's the same as a car, you know, or any other piece of property. So that is one of the lowest priorities. I mean, the top priority is anti-terrorism, which it should be. I mean, that's a good thing, you know, and public corruption. These are very important things. They affect our community and our society. But art crime is placed in the same level as any property crime. And it's hard to understand art crime because, I mean, to be able to investigate it properly, you have to have an understanding of some art, you know, and have that open-mindedness to be able to look at art to see where it would go. And I think a lot of times in law enforcement, law enforcement officers are not well-versed, okay, in art itself. So
it's not taught at the academy.
It's not taught at the academy. So they don't know the difference between a Picasso and, say, a Renoir, which, you know, you don't want to embarrass people, and they don't want to be embarrassed and not know and admit that they don't know the difference or what it is. So I think sometimes it can be intimidating, you know, for law enforcement officers. And it's a very specific type of crime. As I say, it's frauds, forgeries, and fakes, or theft, or, you know, when it's smuggled. These are all specific types of crimes. And having an understanding of how to investigate those crimes, it takes a certain expertise. So I don't think that they teach that in the academy. And
property crime isn't one where you have a SWAT team next door that, as you said, is there to avenge your death, not necessarily to prevent your death, but they're there to make sure.
Not there to save you, but avenge you.
But avenge you. Yeah. That's a little intimidating.
Well, that's in any undercover operator. You know, undercover officers have some of the most stressful work in the world. You know, when you're working undercover, you have to remember everything that you're supposed to be doing. Remember that you have to be, you know, gathering evidence at the same time. And as I say, you know, the saying we used to have as undercover agents, and not just myself, but all of us, the guys working motorcycle gangs, drugs, everything, was that your support team wasn't going to be there in time to save you, but they would avenge you. And so the idea was always keep your head about you, always remember where you are, and that it's up to you to get yourself out of trouble. And
for you also to make sure you got the piece of artwork out of trouble.
Right. Well, I remember many times I'd be hiding the artwork. Well, I remember one time in Madrid, we recovered a $4 million Bruegel painting. And when the SWAT team came in, I remember hiding under the bed with the painting. So generally speaking, you know, I was out the door first, you know, and I usually have the art with me. You know, one of the jokes I usually make is, you know, how people think that undercover agents are brave and whatnot, and that their mascots would be lions or tigers and bears. But no, it was always a chicken, because chickens run fast and get out.
That's right.
You know, and that's the way you go.
And I'm sorry, sir, we've run out of time.
Oh, well,
thank you very much. Priceless is the name of the book. We appreciate you being here.
I appreciate being here. It's been a good time. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on this Dialogue Web Extra.